On today's episode of the Cryptoverse, several news outlets are reporting that the Chinese regulators have outright banned ICOs, and EOS releases an update and state that their development is ahead of schedule. All of that and a mini market roundup on today's episode of the Cryptoverse, so stay right there. Hi there guys, welcome to the latest episode of the Cryptoverse, your regular dose of news and commentary on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies and blockchains. I'm your host, Chris Coney, the founder of Cryptoversity, the online school where you can learn about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies and blockchains. Find out more at cryptoversity.com. So let's begin with the market roundup, courtesy of coinmarketcap.com. Most of the top 20 are down, and down by a significant amount today. Let us begin with the biggest winner of the day. There is actually one winner in the top 20. The only coin that's actually up at the time of recording is Bitcoin, and it's up just 1.03%. And that just keeps it just inside the top 20 with a $380 million market cap, and just under that is Tether with $371 million. Now, 2.6 million of Bitcoin has been traded, and a single token is worth 0.002 cents. Right above that is the biggest loser of the day. It's H shares, the old H cash we spoke about recently. It's dropped by an enormous 57.57%, down to $11.72 a coin and a $393 million market cap. And that crash was on a $58 million trading volume in the 24-hour period. Wow, that is a significant drop, especially for something in the top 20 that has such a large market cap. So that's more than halved its market cap. Moving on from there, LiteCoin gets the most traded altcoin award with 551 million of trading volume. LiteCoin has also shaved 13.5% itself, down to $69. However, that's still higher than it's been of late, and it's still a reasonably high number for LiteCoin. LiteCoin maintains 5th position with a $3.6 billion market cap. It seems now you need to be at least a $1 billion market cap to get into the top 10. And I have the honorable mention going to Bitcoin Cash, because normally that goes to the coin that rose the second most. But today I've given it to the coin that has dropped the least in the top 20, and it's Bitcoin Cash. That's down just 3.11% to $570. Bitcoin Cash sat there at 9.4 billion of market cap. Now for the Crazy Coin Award, again, that's normally goes to the coin that has risen the most in the top 100. Today I'll have to give it to the coin that has dropped the most in the top 100, and it's Binance. Binance is down again 55%, let's call it. It's 54.97. So that's halved in value as well, and is now trading at 81 cents a coin. And that's after $9 million of trading volume. Binance sits in 64th place in the top 100 and is sat there with an $81.8 million market cap. Quite a dramatic fall for Binance there. So that's all I've got in terms of the market roundup. Let's begin the news segment by starting off with the minor story, and then we'll go on to the major story. Well, I say minor story, I mean shorter. So China bans all initial coin offerings, pending a broad review. Now, I'm not sure if this is true or not, so let's get into it. I got this from Silicon Angle, and they are claiming here in the red section, regulators in China have banned all initial public coin offerings, pending a review and the possible introduction of regulations to control the booming market. And then they go on to say that they actually mention 2 Chinese regulatory agencies. They say in the orange here, news that China was considering banning ICOs emerged last week when it was reported that China's Securities and Futures Commission, the China Banking Regulatory Commission, and other regulatory agencies had met and were considering banning all ICOs until concerns about risks were addressed. Now, the thing here is that there's a break in the chain in the way they're reporting this. They start off by saying like all ICOs have been banned, and they talk about last week, but they don't specify, the bit they don't link together, they don't specify which regulatory agency has actually brought about the ban. And I followed the sources that they quote and checked myself on a number of Chinese government agency websites, but I just wasn't able to find an official confirmation that they had actually enforced an outright ban on ICOs. I mean, even the Shanghai Daily, here's another article about this, regulators block ICO trading. Even this says in the yellow here, Chinese regulators have blocked booming businesses of ICOs or initial coin offerings, which is an unregulated channel by which funds are raised for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency ventures because it's related to illegal money raising, the media claimed yesterday. But even they don't, they pretty much say the same thing as the SiliconANGLE site, but they don't actually quote the specific agency or give a reference, a link to an official press release from an official Chinese regulator that ICOs have actually been banned. So they also say here, they quote some numbers on this SiliconANGLE website. The green bit here, it says, initial coin offerings have boomed in China during 2017, with some 65 ICOs as of July having raised 2.62 billion yuan, which is near enough $400 million, from 105,000 individuals. Now, that might sound like a lot, but when you consider the size of China, it kind of puts it into perspective, and then it doesn't seem like such crazy numbers, does it? Anyway, this is the first time I've heard anyone claim that there has been an actual outright ban on ICOs in China. So let's monitor the news headlines over the next few days and see if we can get some confirmation of this. So let's move on to the second story of the day, where I unleash the fanboy within. The dawn of EOS.io. There's been another official release from EOS. Here it is on their Steemit. So they begin in the red here by saying that the EOS.io development team has spent the summer working very hard. Summer is over and the development of the EOS.io software is ahead of schedule. Well, my goodness me. Then it goes on to say, under the heading of proof of performance, our internal testing shows that the software is currently able to sustain 10,000 transactions per second in a single-threaded performance workload. This puts it on track to support over 1 million transactions per second on machines with over 100 CPU cores. That's not that hard. You'd have a server with, multiple cores, 16-core CPUs. You'd have 10 of them. Bob's your uncle, right? It wouldn't even take up the size of your wardrobe, a computer of that processing capacity. So that's kind of huge, right? This is faster than almost any blockchain in existence that uses single-thread processing, which is how most blockchains work, through single-threaded performance. But EOS is being built for multi-threaded performance, so not only is it faster in a single thread than most other blockchains, it's also just one string to its bow, and could be put in parallel with many other threads to create over nearly 1 million transactions per second. So that's kind of mind-blowing. Moving on from there to the cyan color here, skip down to this section. It's called User Local Storage of Application Data. In addition to supporting read access across accounts, applications can now store data on other accounts. This means a currency contract can store the balance on individual user accounts rather within its own scope. So what this means is that it means it's a bit of a head screw for me, first off. I'm going to have to get my head around this, because this is a bit of a paradigm shift in the way that smart contracts and token issuances work. Like, for the way it works on Ethereum, for example, is that the tokens remain in the smart contract, and because the tokens belong to that smart contract that issued them. But the smart contract kind of maintains a list of Ethereum addresses that own some of those tokens, and it maintains a list of how many tokens each of the Ethereum addresses owns. And then you just transfer ownership from your address to someone else's address when you surrender the tokens to someone else. With EOS, what they're saying here is that you're going to store the balance in your own user account instead of centrally in the smart contract. And that also aids in this parallel processing. It allows multiple things to happen at once, because you're not having to query the centralized smart contract and wait for the balance to update, because if you don't do that, you might end up spending the same amount twice. So it has to be in order. So that's kind of different as well. And yeah, the more we learn about EOS, the more we see it differentiating itself from other projects. Moving on from there though, under this yellow heading of unlimited horizontal scaling, it says the latest design advancements in EOS.io gives developers high single machine performance. Businesses can scale to millions of transactions per second before requiring a more complex asynchronous architecture. So when they talk about horizontal scaling, this is where they're talking about doing things in parallel. So a typical blockchain has what we call a height, right? That's like the block number. And each time a new block is produced, it's stacked on top of an ever taller pile of previous blocks. So we build blockchains vertically, which is why we call it block height. And we do it like in a single file, like a single lane highway. But imagine if you were able to widen that highway to an unlimited number of lanes. That's kind of analogous to what EOS are talking about here in terms of doing things in parallel. On from there, they talk about this next generation network topology. It says EOS.io software is designed to empower block producers, i.e. miners, to produce a high-performance decentralized infrastructure as a service. Application developers need more than just block producers aggregating transactions. They need API nodes, they need seed nodes, they need database indexes, storage and hosting, and all manner of other things, right? So this for me is one of the most critical things to understand about the approach that EOS are taking to solving the problem of like planetary scale blockchain-based applications. As the scale of these systems grow, the complexity of the technology gets to a point where you just have to let go of the idea of allowing amateurs and hobbyists to be the network infrastructure, right? And then they go on to say here in the purple color, it says high-performance blockchains demand high-performance network architectures with very different requirements from existing blockchains. At 1 million transactions per second, each node is equivalent to achieving hundreds of megabytes per second per connection. This is trivial for large data centers, but inconceivable for home users. So they're not building a system where anyone can just act as like a miner or a node. If they insisted on that as one of their design criteria, they would have been developing this thing with their hands tied behind their back. So instead, they've started with the end in mind, right? They've started with the market end. They've realized that if we're going to run Facebook on the blockchain, then you need potentially billions of transactions per second for all the likes, comments, shares, posts, and all the rest of it. So they thought if you need billions of transactions per second, that's where we need to get to. Then they worked backwards to arrive at the kind of hardware that nodes and block producers would need to be running, which is how they've arrived at, we just can't allow amateurs to do it on their laptops, right? Now I can tell that this particular thing will upset many cryptocurrency and blockchain purists, let's call them. But one of the main reasons why I can see EOS succeeding is because they are not idealists. They are pragmatists, which is a person who is oriented towards the success or failure of a particular line of action. So in the case of insisting that EOS nodes and miners can run on your laptop, that would destroy any chance of it scaling to billions of transactions per second. So that's why they're not pursuing that angle. And as another example of why this is necessary, let's go back to the article here and go down to the gray bit that I've highlighted. They say one more thing, EOS.io storage. It says this enables a host of new innovative decentralized business models such as decentralized YouTube, decentralized SoundCloud, or other storage intensive projects. In addition to computational bandwidth, native EOS.io software-based blockchain tokens will now have access to free cloud storage, free hosting, and download bandwidth via IPFS or HTTPS. This access can be used without consuming or transferring your tokens. Yikes. So if EOS miners are also going to be responsible for file storage via the IPFS, which is the interplanetary file system, they're going to need like data center sized, data storage capacity. For you and I though, as users of EOS based apps, this is an added benefit of like holding EOS tokens, right? Free cloud storage, And the best part, as they say here, is that we don't have to spend the tokens in order to get access to these computing resources. All we have to do is hold them, and that entitles us to a share of the network's computing resources. Very, very interesting stuff. So there's actually a lot more to this update than I've covered. Just in the interests of time, I've skipped a lot of it and just highlighted the pertinent bits. But I'd encourage everyone to read the whole thing to get a better idea of how EOS is shaping up. You know, I get more excited about EOS every time I learn a little bit more about it. And I'm sure I will do as it continues to develop. Final segment for today, because it's a Monday, we're going to welcome a few new patrons. We have one new supporter who is just pledging money to help the channel, and at the rate of $1 per month, so I appreciate that very much. I don't get these people's names just because of the way it processes the transactions, but the Zekef87 is the first part of the email address, so thank you very much for that pledge. And then we have some new premium level patrons who also get access to the online courses. We have, here we go with the names, Anthony Caliguri, I hope that's right. Daniel Rojas has appeared again. I think he keeps cancelling his sign up again, so he gets mentioned on the show. We have Terry Harwood, or Harewood, and we have Michael Klieger. Welcome all you new 4 patrons for this week. Thanks very much for supporting Cryptoversity, the Cryptoverse, and in helping me to boost cryptocurrency adoption. All right, thanks very much for joining me today, guys. If you liked this episode, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you're new around here, get subscribed. And if you would like access to my very best material, such as my structured online courses that will teach you things like how to make and save money with Bitcoin, why not check out cryptoversity.com. Alright guys, that's all for today. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Cryptoverse. So until then, it's me, Chris Coney, saying bye for now.